Hello once again and welcome to the program. I am Suren. I would like to present to you some of my thoughts behind my research, along with other people's researches, into psychic endeavor. We have mentioned briefly about the free will during the last episode, if you can recall. Let us talk now a little more about the free will in the light of the subject of what is expected in the future terms to start with. This terminology, as you may realize, means different things to different people. For some, it implies the idea, yes, yet as we all do, in other words, we follow out our own fancy and or desire as far as possible. For others, it seems to imply the right to choose, the right, when we come to crossroads, to follow a particular lane that seems, from our point of view, the most desirable and perhaps even alluring. So let's strive. Who knows that perhaps we have decided to journey along the shaded road with green plantations and some palm trees around, and not the road that is open on every side. Who indeed makes that decision? Call it the egregation defined by the terminology, body, soul, and the spirit. These are all built up out of various elements, but all are of one and the same artwork, same creation. They have been shaped throughout the ages. All the hereditary or the past influences needs to be taken into account. All those influences of the psychic or spiritual character are included in this. These seem to be innumerable or countless to our finite minds. Friends, foes, relations, and many circumstances all help to shape that inner being, which makes the decision to follow that particular road. Does it not strike you, therefore, that you are asking what is impossible in reality because of the very nature of the human being, when one makes the demand that the free will must be the ruler? Almost all of humanity are originally the creation of many other people, living or deceased. It is all registered in the human DNA. One might even claim that the humans are largely the victims of their variable influences and bound to follow those tendencies implanted into them. In other words, all mankind can be classified, in a sense, one, yet many. Man's history and characters, since the dawn of time, might be considered as a vast web, ever growing and growing. And the source of it all is to be found within the master architect, even the master artist, who indeed is responsible for every particle of the fine material, for the whole history and the whole characteristics of man since the beginning of time. Now, we must also realize that as the Creator, the great master builder, he should know what shape or form the life of the individual will be like before that person is even born. Let us say that obviously he knows precisely the nature of the unborn baby and how he will develop from the hour he leaves his mother's womb, wherefrom his tendencies will lead him, the manner and in which circumstances will mold him. The great picture of all creation has been conceived in the imagination of that God person, the master artist, ultimate intelligence, before the baby has evolved out of what we call the void. The future of the earth is ready, already in the imagination of that God. It has happened because he has already thought of it. But what has not happened in the change within the individual soul, the manner, for instance, in which it reacts to the trials and the joys of life, the reactions of the soul are all that matter in connection with the human's earth life. It may ruin the fun, but dare one to fresh effort. You see, you create within yourself, in that you increase the power of your will, and by doing so, increase your courage. Will you give up hope and sink into penury or dullness, thus increasing the weakness of your character? You have, in short, free will, only in the sense of creation, only in the molding of your own soul. Now, that is the important and vital factor in connection with your life on earth. Because when you go back to the group of which you are part, according to the mold of your soul, so shall be the mold of circumstance in the future life of the young soul of your group who is about to be born. It is hard to put this idea into words, believe me. Now, the Mighty One, if exists, watches over the cosmic life of the group souls. According to their growth, he plans or designs the future of the life of mankind. But it was all imaged by him at the beginning. So is there a little chance in the vast cosmic picture that lies in his imagination. Let's talk about memory. Within and without the body. Let me tell you briefly some of the aspects of memory as they present themselves to us. Firstly, you would probably like to understand what memory is, as it is in the case of so-called living. What can you do? Your will decides that you shall remember the name of whoever. It makes the effort to concentrate upon that image. What is then the exact process? We might ask. It draws to it a certain very fine essence, invisible to the human eye. Scientists will probably describe that essence as something far subtler than electricity, and yet of the same nature. If they will be strong enough, this can be led to make the necessary imprint again upon what would appear to you, if you had the perception, to be something like fluid, something that flows. This fluid, or fluid, penetrates matter, and with the assistance of the essence we speak of, can become so formed that it is able to get in touch with the correct cell in the brain that is ready to respond. The will, with the assistance of these two elements, is able to join, as by a thread, the image of that person to the cell. You have such unusual imaginings and sometimes adulterated ideas of space, as long as you are in matter or in material world, that you cannot for a moment grasp how millions of little images made in this manner are all in touch with the millions of cells in the brain through these threads. Imagine an immense spider's web about you. All the strands bear memories or thoughts to the brain as the wires transmit the digital electronic messages and can carry to the brain the messages, or rather the sign of the image. It has been created through impressions being made on something plastic with the assistance of this essence, similar to your television systems. Your words make it impossible. You have no terminology, for instance, for this material that receives the impressions. But it is not of the nature of matter. It is the substance out of which thought is constructed. Naturally, it is not a substance as you might understand. This material receives all the impressions your sight, your hearing, and touch convey. However, it does not make the connecting thread with the brain cell unless your will makes the conscious effort which is necessary for its construction. You may now ask me, what is will? Will is the energy that flows to you from the large individual mind without you editing it. Of course, to the collection of images that are all attached to the physical brain, as we have been already trying to speak about. The will is influenced by the physical body. The larger mind contains that infinite subtlety of atoms that are not destroyed through the death of that crude machine you call the body. Though we call them atoms, they would appear to you to be of a fluid character. Realize now, though, that the essential you is something that is composite as long as you are alive on planet Earth. It's almost like an alliance between what is material and what you may call immaterial. The body or matter has certain yearnings brought about by the actual nature of its construction. These are not you, but they dominate you because they can usually command much of what is immaterial and can enter into the directive process that goes on in the cells of the brain. These cells are so highly sensitive that they can and do respond to the stimulus of a being who is motion rather than substance. Think of your will then as motion, ever by its active energy, coalescing these images, marshalling them, causing the brain, which is the only part at all sensitive to pure motion, to draw upon the threads that are attached to these images when the need for their uprising in the consciousness is made manifest. Here we have tried again to explain what you may not be able possibly conceive so long as you are in the material nature. Memory out of the body is a different affair altogether. When we are discarnate beings, we are far more detached from the earthly images in it, for the reason that they are no longer bound to us by matter through the medium of the brain cells. The threads, as you must realize, are broken by death. It does not mean that these images of all the impressions ever made on you are destroyed. They still exist. But we, when we choose, can, under certain psychic conditions, draw those images we desire to us by making the effort of the will that places us amongst them. We do not draw them to us as when we are alive, with labor and difficulty. We simply make the necessary effort, which places as the state that makes it possible for us to perceive the images we desire. Now, we are not in that state when we communicate through to you. That is some difficulty for us. We are quite detached from these images, and unless the medium has the power, the psychic power, of absorbing the facts demanded from our memory, with our assistance, of course, we cannot provide you with the evidence you require. The ordinary human being does not possess this particular power, which is a kind of overflow of the fluid, the atoms, which takes the shape of your body and is about you, though invisible to you. Now, these images are outside the brain. they are outside the body, being connected by threads that are invisible to you, because they pass through matter and are not themselves matter. They are amenable to touch, certainly, but are not remembered unless a very considerable effort is made to draw the appropriate thread and its image. Even then, there are many images that cannot be drawn within the normal consciousness. We cannot find in your language the words sufficiently exact to make our meaning clear. Now, memory may be likened to the sea. It is all about you and as elusive as the water of the ocean. When we are alive, we come to it like children with our small buckets and fill them with the salty fluid. How little we carry away up the sands. How easily and swiftly spill it upon the ground. Yet, behind us is that vast area of water, moving endlessly upon the shore. The sound of memory is now to be like the sound of the tide, as when, in the olden days, we were listening to it through the summer evenings. We would like you to think of memory as the great sea. It gives of itself to the earth through all the seasons. It is therefore all about you as moisture is about you. Even when you are on earth, you may draw from this invisible memory, almost unknowingly. And as one country has a damper atmosphere, maybe heavier rainfall than another, so will one mentality draw to a greater share of the collective memory than another. It is changed when filtered through the brain of man. It takes upon itself his color, his personality, and eventually it comes up to his consciousness as the original thought, but horribly dull and unoriginal at times. For the average man draws through him mostly the recent memory ejected by many living brains. The thinker has a great capacity for drawing to him the memories that lie in the depths of human nature. The strong memory, not the superficial one that is tossed off by the brain of man at the moment. What is rapidly cast off does not continue to live for any length of time. It is only the emotional memories or the memories created by a fine vehemence that permanently continue. Man is like a power station, constantly generating fresh electrical fluid of memory, constantly receiving, constantly giving out again. Human beings cling to their individualities. Probably it is but fitting that they should do so, but only what is fundamentally themselves, what is the very kernel of their being, survives. The continual dissolution. In life, we are mentally perpetually dying. In other words, as in every third season, the tree casts off its leaves, so do we, as the years go trooping by. Continually cast off our memories, and in so doing, we change very considerably. What a stranger the boy of 10 years is to the man whose 60 years have sounded. How shy and self-conscious they would be if they met. How in many aspects they would dislike each other. But from far down there would come some elusive stirring, some strange thrilling, deep calling to deep, if you will, so that these two, the boy aged 10 and the man aged 60, would, despite their superficial differences, be drawn to each other as surely as the magnet draws the iron. They would scarcely know why they thus responded, flew together despite their conscious incongruities. But they would inevitably respond, be drawn together, for something deeper than individual memory compels this unity. They share very few concrete memories. They are strangers, but the core of things have moved them to be comrades or friends. In like manner, when men and women journey to this new state of life, they meet perhaps after many years as wives, husbands, sons, daughters, who have tarried 20 or 30 years behind them on the planet Earth. If all is well, if they meet again in the world of the departed souls, they will not recognize each other through memory of facts, but they will know each other through something that goes far deeper than memory. Love and hate, caution and impetuosity, all the qualities that lie at the base of a man's or a woman's nature, will cause them to recognize each other so that there is no need for reference or search in the so-called book of life. The fundamental knowledge still remains, and old ties may be renewed. That is, if they belong to the fundamental part of you. But, says our informing source, please believe me, since I died, I have not remained stationary. I have been changing, evolving, putting on, if you will, like the trees, a fresh coat of leaves, but unchanged within, so that my wife and my children will know me through some of my earth memories be buried as the foliage underground when winter comes. And he continues, in stating that some of those memories are a closed book to me, I do not wish to indicate that they are cut off irretrievably from me. They do not, in my present state, assist me. But I am exceedingly occupied on the fourth plane in forging new impressions out of fresh set of experiences in form. Be assured, I shall, in the intermediate state between the fourth and fifth plane of being, review all those earth memories again. Let us talk about the great memory. Now, the great memory is, if you will, the unconscious mind of the whole human race. In our life, as in yours, there is the consciousness, the self known to other discarnate beings who live in the same state as those similar to them, fundamentally. But there's also a deeper self, which is the self of the world, imperishable, as I believe, containing what was and is, also what shall be. For the history of man, from the earliest to the latest times, is all within what is sometimes called the tree of memory. You may say, but future events have not yet happened. So how can they have shaped themselves upon the ether? I will tell you that they have happened, but they have already been born in the imagination of the maker of them, the God, if you like. But the future is difficult to read. I mean difficult for men, human beings to read, because the memory of the future has not been so deeply impressed upon the invisible, timeless substance, in that it has been thought only once and not twice. Thought by the maker of the universes. Therefore, it is very fine and faint, and only its echo is caught by certain mortals who have the inner hearing, whereas the gross and clumsy subjectives, thinking of man, causes past memories to be from the point of view of the sensitive, more definitely shaped in the flowing energy. We would like you to understand the significance of this vast memory in the life of the ever-living, whom you may call departed souls. These, in pursuing the present existence, can live away from the memory of all past existence, or they can resume a vanishing personality by picking up the threads from the great memory and absorbing them as you might suck a sugar cane, the nourishment of a past personality. It is not always perfectly shaped when the discarnate being endeavors to communicate. Sometimes only a little of the past individual's garment of mortality is taken from the great storehouse and for a brief while displayed. Now, I would call your attention to an important point in this connection. We, you and I, are each recorded on some page in this great memory. We must, as players in a drama, learn the old part before we endeavor to speak to our friends on earth. Through a channeler, if you like. As a rule, we neglect this task, or we succeeded in obtaining only a glimpse of the memory that enshrines our vanished personality. We have vanished and we have not vanished. It is hard to explain this duality. Fundamentally, we are the same as we were when a loved wife, mother, or sister bade us goodbye in the earth life. We are the same in the sense that we should continue to have a feeling of repulsion for certain things and people we disliked on earth. And the old affections would flame up if we met again those people and things that were dear to us. But if by personality you mean this sum total of our earth memories, our knowledge of Greek and Latin, German and Polish, our knowledge of concrete facts, then we are indeed changed, in that we can, as a rule, only resuscitate the old knowledge by obtaining contact with that part of the great memory, which is ours. Yet we do retain, apart from it, our old mentality, much of its idiosyncrasies. That part of ourselves that is no longer integral, that has become detached, is the fleeting physical consciousness of that period, when we bade the earth farewell, is the aggregation of memory concerning facts in our earth life, concerning certain concrete knowledge memorized by us. Emotional memory remains as integral part of the soul, for it comes from the creative life. What I am now going to tell you might sound a little curious, unusual, and many scientists have not truly in the least realized how very detached the consciousness, or if you like, the soul is from the body. It is the inheritance received from many past generations, polyzoic or even polypsychic in itself, and indefinitely or infinitely more complicated, with some degrees of nerves, especially in the higher centers, even in the middle or the lower centers. In fact, those nerves seem to be upon which the human consciousness plays. It should be understood that the humanity, in their etheric state, to a certain degree, corresponded with the physical organism. Have you ever pondered over that mysterious phrase? In the beginning, the image was made flesh. This phrase may be quoted wrongly, but something similar to it can be found within your scriptures, which contains some truth. You live in organism and is, to a certain degree, a reflection of what is in the unseen. There is certainly a unifying principle for which we have already spoken about. There are a few minor consciousnesses. When we communicate with Earth, one of these minor consciousnesses, or we may call them psychic entities, taking control of the channel, supplanting one of the psychic entities. However, we never supplant what we may call as the unifying principle in the medium, which can be anything, person, or even an electronic device. And if we did, she would go probably blank, causing psychiatric problems. It therefore is very difficult, and it's only attempted by certain, as it is said, malevolent entities on the physical side, invisible to human eye. Now, you may imagine a country. Take anyone as an example. Do it over with towns, all being self-contained, yet looking to that last city of the country for general directions and for a certain essential stimulus, ? Such is the condition of the discarnate. He or she is a kingdom, bounded by what would seem to have the appearance of a veil. It has a very unusual elasticity. I mean, we differ from the kingdom to which we are being attuned or eluded, in that we can alter it, willing the shape of this very subtle material or fluid. In fact, we differ in many other respects. Our surroundings are of a different matter. You may ask me to define this. Well, it is difficult, but I think I may explain it in this way. The atoms of the very finest kind that comprises the entire psychic universe or thought universe, and they pass through your coarse matter. They belong to another state altogether. You may then question me. How does your world or state differ from our earth? Well, it differs, I should say, considerably, for the reason that this fluid is quite unformed. After death of the physical body, if we are sufficiently developed, we enter into our subliminal self. When we were alive, in the physical terminology, we believed that there were two forms of consciousness. One, the inner mind, the other, the subliminal, that which was above the threshold, that which controlled our ordinary business, that which appeared to direct operations generally. We looked on the subliminal, that which was below the threshold. The inner mind, the inspired part of nature, the creative source. Since I have passed over, I have come to realize that actually, in the sense of pure mind, there is no subliminal part. There is instead an infinitely complicated machine, which has become more and more subtilized through the centuries, so that no response to the slightest of vibrations or frequencies sent out by this subliminal, or what you may perhaps call the subconscious, which I prefer to call unconscious, consist of. What then does this subliminal or ordinary consciousness consist? The nerve memory, all the physical desires of the body, to a large extent is controlled by that nerve memory. And lastly, and most importantly, of the reflection of the subliminal part of you. Usually, the subliminal senses reflection, which to a faint or powerful degree is received by the fluid to a faint, which I can only call the nerve memory. It transmits the reflection in vibrations or frequencies to the brain. Normally, in the main of the image, it is interpreted by the nerve of memory and of the material part, the brain, which is responsible or responsive to the image sent by this in the human mind. But what sort is not by any means all? The brain and body, as a rule, must set the desire for the image in motion before the letter can be dispatched and made perceptible. In short, the body must be receptive, or rather, the nerves and the brain must receive and register. These two alter and elaborate all. They simplify and give color to the contribution that has come from the higher portions of man's nature. There is also a reverse process, the assimilation of impressions of the material world by the brain, which are transferred to the higher centers and returned in due course. There is, in short, a constant trafficking during the individual's waking hours between these various parts of his being. Many points still require elucidation. You probably desire to know where is that positive and very frequently objectionable entity the ego is. It's a figure worthy of the attention of mathematicians, if you like. It is really the sum total of the physical needs of man and the equations through many generations of inherited memories added to his innate capacity for corresponding with the inner mind and for receiving its image. Now, there are times of creative activity which scholars have been kind enough to allocate to the inner mind. Then great works are produced, and you cannot understand the mystery of their creation. They are produced through a certain singular attitude or aptitude on the part of the brain, which responds to the message from the inner mind, directing the nerve memory. The fluid shape does not act as a medium, and there is, in consequence, no blurred information. Added to this, of course, must be a considerable store of knowledge or images, all connected with your brain cells. by those invisible threads, of which we have spoken. You must realize that the act of creation then is collaboration. The stream of energy from the inner mind molds the work of art. Partly out of these associations, these memories, but also partly out of the harvest of floating thoughts, from which it can draw more directly when the fluid shape is not the actual medium. In the case of the normal consciousness, the fluid shape plays an important part and is largely the ego. It will frequently draw from the psychic entities, the minor consciousness, but these usually are directly bound up with the unifying principle. They are merely its tributaries. When there is a disintegration of personality, it is sometimes due to one of these entities losing touch with the unifying principle, owing to the principal misbehavior or possible misbehavior of the fluid shape, or nerve memory, which sends out a very powerful appeal to the psychic entity. The central consciousness, however, is usually, if directly evoked, able to obtain control again. Now consider and study the evolution of men. The larger minds has been there in a state of, at times informed, from the dark ages, from the beginning, if there ever was a beginning, which I doubt. At first, this mind found it could only at times send faint reflections to primitive people, whom it had gradually evolved and created as a sculptor creates. But in time, the form of man developed and was the more easily able to receive the image. The Word was made flesh with greater and greater facility. You may now question, in connection with the mind, why it does sought to express itself. Well, it obviously desired individuality. It also desired form, and the form and individuality were, to a certain degree, achieved through this constant interchange between mind and matter. It is still the essence of matter. The nerves and nerve memory that dominates and controls the actions of the human being. So seek for the normal ego when you are a living woman or man in the nerve soul, in the construction of the brain and body, sent by the unifying principle. The Word was made flesh. In that phrase, you may find the whole mystery of man's nature, sum total of his being. You wish to know what is ordinary consciousness. Okay? The actual constructive force is, in its essence, the nerve soul, but ordinary consciousness is a sum in all. The needs of the body, The cravings of the mechanism are all influencing the nerve soul and its decisions. What do you call the subconscious or unconscious is but the reflection, the light from above. Sometimes it is feeble because the summons is weak. It also plays a part in the decision. Time, of course, is a factor that puzzles you in this connection. But the whole organization is, through centuries of evolution, so subtilized that it can make its decision rapidly. In the days of primitive man, the I, the constructive force, the ego, was principally the body, the nerves, the fluid shape, even were subordinate. Do understand, however, there are not, save in very rare cases, two wills making decisions at the same time consciously. There is only one, because there is only one channel, but the subliminal self, which is outside the larger mind, if you prefer that terminology, is exceedingly active. And when messages in daytime are sent to it through the channel, that is to say via the nerve soul, then this mind works upon the message and sends it during sleep in a new guise back to the nerve soul, which it can easily do because the soul is apart from the body, quite still, and yet able to reflect the desired image which is craved for in waking hours. This is unworking and unwaking, attached by it to the brain cells, and you find some problems solved for you as by a magician when you are aroused again out of sleep. Initiative during the day then comes from the nerve soul, fed by the image or the reflection from the subliminal, and influenced always by the body and its desires. With these words, I intend to close today's program. Until the next episode. Keep smiling and be truly happy. Thank you.